Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Opinionated SEO Opinions. I am one of your hosts, Sam Torres, and I am actually in person with my lovely co-host, Tori Gray. We are super excited today. We are going to be talking to one of my favorite SEOs and our real-life Barbie, Kristina Azarenko. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And super exciting to see you both together, even though we are currently not live, not in person, but it's still so exciting, and I'm excited for this episode.
Awesome. We are too, and we are stoked to be talking about SEO and the relationship with development, from what kind of coding skills are required for SEOs, spoiler, well, actually, I'm not going to spoil it. We'll get there. And then how do you work with your development team? So for those who aren't lucky enough yet to know everything about you like we do, Kristina, can you give us a short little intro and just kind of who you are?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kristina Azarenko. I've been in the SEO industry for over 10 years. And I always keep saying over 10 years because I don't want to count the years. It just makes me feel older. But yeah, I've been in the SEO for a pretty long time. And I started as a junior SEO, obviously, with link building and everything. But I pretty soon started being really interested in the technical part of SEO because it felt so intimidating and hard. So that's why it was a challenge for me. And I've gone through working full time for companies to being a technical SEO consultant and then a course creator. So that's me.
Awesome. And for those who aren't familiar with it yet, definitely check out Kristina's course, Tech SEO Pro, for really learning any of your technical SEO foundations and into advanced. So super awesome course, highly recommend.
Yep. I also want to jump in and say we're very excited to talk to you about this because we also have opinions on this. I think we're going to get a good, well-rounded view because I'm a former product manager and I'm married to a software engineer. Yeah. And Sam used to be a software engineer and he's also married to a software engineer. And you're married to a designer, aren't you, Kristina?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I recently heard one SEO, one female SEO saying that she married a developer, and that's how she helps the developer SEO relationships, one developer at a time, basically. So I'm not doing it directly. I'm not doing it directly because my husband is a web designer, but he has development background, so it's kind of counts.
Oh, it totally counts.
Oh, absolutely.
He's still having to code things.
Yes.
It brings an interesting perspective, though I still need to do a poll about how many women that work in tech SEO are partnered with developers because it's a thing. It's like a dramatically high ratio.
Well, I think it's also just because we talk about our work and it takes a certain technical mind to understand it. So there just ends up being things that you can connect on. At least that's my theory.
We speak the same language.
We do.
So, yeah.
Which I think a lot of people miss. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of tackle some of those misconceptions in this talk. So are we ready to kick off?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. So Kristina, would love to know, what are your thoughts on what do you think are really the foundational coding skills that a technical SEO should have, if any?
Okay, so I really loved at least especially the last part of your question, if any, because I'm a big opponent of I really hate when people say that you can't become a technical developer without having development skills, without coding. And I feel that it's such a gatekeeping, and so many people feel intimidated because they're like, oh, I don't have a computer science degree, or I can't code, I don't know JavaScript, or PHP or whatever, so that's why I can't be a technical SEO. From my point of view, and I'm a living example of that, I do not have any degree in computer science, or I have never been a developer. I don't have a development background, and I'm still successful in technical SEO. Why? Because I know exactly what I need to know to be a technical SEO, and I let developers do their job, because at the end of the day, everybody should do their job, right? So from my point of view, there is no specific coding language that a technical SEO should know, but it really helps to and I feel that it comes naturally when you start doing SEO. you need to understand HTML a little bit. Again, you don't need to write a HTML code to like create a page from scratch. You don't need to do that. But like how links are added, web standards, these kind of things. And that's basically it. And then, as I said, like know exactly things. Maybe we'll talk about this later in this episode, that you need to know in order to be successful in technical SEO, but not in order to be a developer. Hope it makes sense.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. I also want to state for the record, you can be a great developer or software engineer without having a computer science degree. In fact, I'm married to one. He's a principal engineer. He doesn't have a computer science degree.
I also don't have a CS degree. I have a marketing degree, and I was a developer.
Senior full stack partner. Like,
that's also true.
So the requirement of that for a tech SEO, it would just be honestly bananas. I completely agree. I don't think you have to learn to write a lick of code. I think you should be able to read the parts that are pertinent for SEO. You need to be able to understand the elements, and understand how they interact and how they're going to impact the world of SEO, so you can do proper QA. If you want to offer JavaScript QA or JavaScript SEO services, then yes, you're going to need to learn to read JavaScript. If not, like there's plenty of technical SEOs that don't do JavaScript SEO, and I think that's okay. There's other things to specialize in too. I also want to say, like, I don't think it's a problem. Like, I feel like there's sort of the one end of the spectrum and the other, and people are saying you have to be a developer, and people saying like, no, you don't have to be a developer. It's not as if there's a problem if you can code. That's a great way to approach technical SEO. If you can code, I think that can be a core advantage. I just don't think it's the be all end all or only way to succeed in technical SEO. I think there's other successful paths too.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And someone who does code, Tori, I love your point about like, you should still be able to read it. And honestly, if it's good code, you know, unless if you're doing app development, then that kind of goes out the window, because then we're talking about C++ and C# and we're not going to talk about that.
I'm talking HTML.
But modern web coding. Yeah. So, you know, you're typically looking at HTML, JavaScript, maybe some PHP. If you're getting really fancy, maybe a little bit of Laravel. But like most of the time, that code should be pretty simple to understand anyways. That if it's something that, you know, a layman can't look at the code and kind of give you an idea of what it's doing, then probably you haven't named things very well, or you're doing things in a really like long form way when it could be shortened. And maybe that's just my bias, but it's, you know, I feel like there's a ton of languages that you can look at and you can still kind of tell what it's doing based on the keywords that are in there. And when I say keywords, I just mean like, what are the functions or things that are being called?
Yeah. And I just want to quickly add on one point here, is that the biggest thing that I hear and see people to talk about when they say that you must know coding to be successful as technical SEO. They say something between the lines of, oh, that helps me, like knowing code or being a developer initially helps me to talk to developers. And again, that's one of the ways to do this. But when you say it helps me to talk to developers, what does it look like? Do you go to them and tell them how to do their job? Do you just like write the code for them and say, oh, like you need to add this to this website? Or, because it's not what technical SEOs are supposed to do, or you just know what exactly needs to be done, you know how to explain it, and you know what it looks like when it's done properly, and you can communicate it to the developer and let them write the code. So that's a big distinction for me.
I think so, which is a perfect segue into our next question, which is really, what are the things or, you know, tips you've learned along the way to have the most success when collaborating with developers? So as someone who doesn't code, what are some of the things that you've learned that does help you to effectively communicate, you know, the need and what you expect it to look like at the end of the day?
This has like two sides, hard skills and soft skills, and both of the sides are super important. So when it comes to hard skills, you need to be very very focused and very like targeted in your communication and detailed as much as you can, but not to the point when you just like send too many things and it gets overwhelming. So what it looks to me when I was working with clients and working with the development teams, I wrote user stories. What it means is that, okay, here is a thing that I want to be implemented because blah, blah, blah. And then the acceptance criteria shows what it looks like when it's implemented properly. So instead of just saying to a developer, oh, add an XML sitemap to the website, and then being frustrated because they added the XML sitemap, but maybe to the wrong location, maybe it's not automatically updated. Well, then it's on you as an SEO because you didn't communicate the requirements properly. So instead of just like throwing this thing, add an XML sitemap, you write a user story, like I want an XML sitemap added because blah, blah, blah. And then the acceptance criteria that is added to this specific URL, that it has all the URLs, the 200 HTTP status code, it's updated automatically whenever a URL is added or removed from the website, like all this kind of stuff. And then it also makes it easier for you to check if things are done properly, because you can write test scripts from this user from this acceptance criteria from your user story. So this is like on the point of hard skills. On the soft skill side, it's also super important to kind of, you can call it like be friends with the developers. To me, it also like be on the same side. So instead of playing a blame game, like, oh, you haven't done this correctly, or I work with developers, they all suck. No, you just realize that you are on one team and your goal is the same, to have this done. But you also don't just come to a developer and say, oh, I need it for SEO. They don't care. Like, nobody cares except for SEOs. Nobody cares what needs to be done for SEO. You explain it in a different language. Plus, if you can understand the motivation of the developer, because usually they would want the website to succeed, but they don't understand this for SEO thing. So on the soft skill side, you need to really be compassionate and really like great in your communication to show that you're on the same team. I think these 2 points are both important. I wouldn't say that one of them is more important, but two are like, they really work really well.
No, I love that you bring up really the empathy, because developers, I feel like the traditional problem we have in SEO is, how many surveys come out and say the biggest challenge for SEO is getting their recommendations implemented. And ultimately it's because dev has limited resources. And, depending on your sprint team, depending on your dev team, they might be working in sprints. Maybe they have a different method, but they have a limited number of hours, just as marketing does. And so you need to kind of help them and also understand you are not the only voice
asking for things.
Asking for changes. Probably. There have been some of those rare instances where we've had clients where there is a team dedicated to SEO dev, which is kind of magical. And I wish there was more of it, but that is definitely the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
So just having that empathy of like, hey, we're all people, we're all working here. And I think you're absolutely right that when you put it in the perspective of, hey, I'm trying to do this to make the site succeed. Developers want that too. Like, I can't think of many developers that would say, yes, I want to work on a product that sucks. Like, who wants to do that? And then agree on the hard skills. It's really, for me, I think it's two-pronged. It's the ticket writing and the QA afterwards. Yep. So, and maybe it's not tickets, but just definitely coming up with those requirements and starting to get into the, what are the nitty-gritty things that we kind of, I feel like maybe as SEOs have started to take for granted because, XML sitemaps. And I think about that used to be, oh, just implement this plugin in WordPress. And now it's evolved because website needs have become more sophisticated. So it also means sometimes our solutions do too. But also, like you say, if you write a really good ticket, then that also becomes your blueprint for doing really solid QA and making sure that it's working in the way that you need. Yeah. So yeah, I do think all of that is super important. Also a tip that I would give to a lot of technical SEOs, and maybe it's not you're building out your technical documentation, because, Tori and I, the number of times we've had to write requirements for an XML sitemap, we can probably do it in our sleep now. But the first few times you do it, it seems really daunting and tedious. But don't be afraid to look at the Google search guidelines, because a lot of times it's already documented in there for kind of best practices. And then also I would just follow that up with saying, like, providing that as a resource to your developers can be really good as well, because sometimes it offers a few different methods to serve the best need based on whatever system that they're in. Because there is just, limitations of how systems are built and how things are coded. I mean, yes, essentially in dev, all things are possible, but it's all a matter of money and time. So sometimes getting 80% of the solution there is going to be the win. But yeah, use that documentation that already exists and focus more on what you want the end result to look like. And I think the difference there is, being future forward instead of being prescriptive, because when you are telling your developer, this is exactly how you code it, if you haven't built the website, you might be wrong.
I mean, I'd say the more likely you are to be prescriptive in that way, the more wrong you are, frankly.
Yeah, I agree. And then
questions, like tell them what you're attempting to accomplish. I mean, that's a classic example of developers want you to tell them what you want to accomplish and not how they should accomplish it, because they're the experts in that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I remember talking about this point, I remember I worked with one client and they sent recommendations for implementing different structured data for different types of pages. So basically, I divided the pages into different page templates, and I wrote which page template should have which structured data with examples and everything. And then the client messages me like a few days later, and they're like, "Oh, they implemented. Can you check?" And I check, and everything is done correctly. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I was so happy. And I would attribute a lot, obviously the developers were great, but also a huge amount of this success was because everything was documented properly and given to them properly. And then this company can use the same documentation for other situations if they have, if they want to build a similar website or whatever. So I was so happy because these things don't happen often. But when I started using these two types of skills, like hard skills plus soft skills, this has made a tremendous difference in the way how my SEO recommendations were implemented. It's just the success rate increased significantly.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, okay. So a classic question though, because we are talking about have empathy with your dev team. And so I do think part of that is properly communicating priority, or even trying to understand level of effort sometimes, because you might think, yeah, can you implement the structured data? And you're like, that'll take 10 hours, right? And then the devs go in and find out that's going to take us 200 hours because of how such and such is built. That has actually happened. But so what are some of the things that you've learned along the way about how to prioritize those asks to dev teams, or even just, from not being a developer, which I think is a positive, frankly, because sometimes I'm like, yeah, it should be totally easy. And I'm wrong because I think I know what I'm talking about. Or even giving estimated levels of effort, or what you think the lift is going to be.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that when it comes to impact, that's what we as SEOs can potentially estimate. When it comes to effort, it's important to check in with the dev team. And when it comes to prioritization, I'm using a framework that I developed, which is high and medium impact and high and medium effort. And I don't even mention anything low, because that's just not realistic. If there is something a very low priority thing, I don't even care in most of the cases how much dev effort this is, because that's perfectionism. And SEO, especially in technical SEO, you can't be a perfectionist, because it's just impossible to reach some perfect website and also like make sure that all the resources are allocated properly. So I usually prioritize things that are super important for crawling and indexing to make sure that the website can actually be seen by Google, can crawl and index. And then the rest of this is like, okay, can Google pick up the right pages to rank for this or that query? Are there any duplication issues? And then I also look at the amount of these issues on the website. So basically, if there is only 1 or 2 pages impacted by the indexing issues, well, it might be a lower priority versus if half of the website or like 80% of the pages are affected by some really weird JavaScript issue. So I also look at the on the whole what percentage of the website pages is affected by this or that issue. That helps me to identify the impact of this being fixed. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing for me, to just like disregard the lowest things, to focus on the bigger things for the impact, and then make sure that I can understand the effort better by talking to the developers.
That seems like the right approach. Definitely, most dev teams are going to have some kind of PM, possibly, or, maybe even just an engineering manager. So, getting into the habit of working with them and trying to right size and get an idea, it adds time to the funnel as far as how long it takes to get implementations done. But ultimately, if they can get done, then that feels like a win versus a lot of the surveys that we see. So I love that. When you're working with dev teams, how have you seen like the organization or the team structure really play into how things are getting done? And I'd love both of you to answer this one, Tori, since you've been on the opposite side, being in charge of product.
I think for me, the most successful projects were like, obviously, surprise, surprise, when the founder or like a really important person in the company is someone who is thinking about SEO, and they're also communicating with the developers. So basically, they're your advocate, and they're also their main boss, like the highest boss. So they would listen to you. That's the best ever structure.
That's a good point.
And usually, like, obviously, it's going to be like in the smaller companies, but I've also, like, what's interesting enough, I also worked for bigger companies that had like this kind of strategy, because my main point of contact was someone with the decision power. So that helps a lot. Like, that helped me a lot as an SEO to get things implemented, because if I'm just talking to someone who is on a lower level and they would need to go and advocate for me inside of the company, that's destined for disaster. So yeah, for me, it's like having an advocate inside of like team that someone who has this decision power is important for success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that will dramatically impact the rate at which you get things implemented. Go figure. And yeah, I've been part of product teams that my CTO cared about SEO. So we got to jump over some barriers and really get work done. So I think that that's an excellent and underrated approach in general. I do love product structured teams. I think technical SEOs who are embedded on product are oftentimes more successful. And I'm talking specifically technical SEO here, right? Like, if you're creating great content, you probably don't need to be a product manager. Though that is a whole interesting thing on its own, but we won't get into that today. But within the realm of product, it ties back to that conversation about having empathy with developers and understanding their workflows and understanding how to get things prioritized. Because part and parcel to being a product manager, at least in a tech manner, is working with engineers to figure out, hey, I have a vision. How do we implement that? I'm going to have to talk to you. I'm going to have to understand the challenges. I don't have to understand how to code it, but I'm going to have to understand what are the big barriers, or we have to accomplish this XYZ big goal in the future. We're replatforming, so let's not invest 1 million hours into fixing something one time on this code base that is going to change entirely on a new code base, right? So I think you can get into the flow. You can build those strong relationships with developers. Suddenly you have the authority and the reason to set up meetings with engineers and to ask them questions and to form those relationships and to say, hey, I want to work through this problem. I just don't get it. Can you explain how these load balancing servers work? Or, why do we have so many different versions of our robots.txt files across these different servers that can serve different results? And how do we prevent that from serving different results to different guts when they come in different? Because that was a particular fire we had to put out when the version of the robots.txt that the Googlebot was seeing was different than the one that we were seeing, because there were multiple. How do we resolve that? So you have to understand the systems and how they work together. So can you work through fires together? And when you can do that, without pointing fingers, without, you're just a member of a team, to bring it back to your primary point. Like when you're a unit, when you're in this together, everything works better. And so I think being on the product team helps do that, because you're physically on the same team and then you want to develop that relationship. Versus when you're on the marketing team, there can be a communication cap, and then you're just meeting with them every quarter when you were asking them for things. And then you have 2 hours to convey everything you need for the next quarter. And it's just not going to, you're setting yourself up for disaster to some degree.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
Yeah. And it is special. Sorry. Have you finished?
No, Kristina, go ahead.
You go.
So I also thought about situations, and oh my God, these types of projects are near and dear to my heart. I know many SEOs hate them, but website migrations are one of the most complex projects in SEO. And one of the reasons why is because they involve so many different teams and so many different things, right? And I sometimes ask, okay, what do I do if I support a migration as an SEO, but I don't have access to a developer team? And I'm like, you're screwed, because that's one of the first things that you agree on, when you go into the project, or even if you're hired as an external consultant or something. That's one of the first non-negotiable thing, that you will have access to the developers, and you explain why. It's not oh, I'm going to bug them all the time and write them emails. No, have a structure, have boundaries, but you must have access to the development team, especially for these high risk projects. So it's super important.
Yeah. So I kind of want to go rewind a little bit, and I think we all agreed, if you have a higher up advocate for you, then obviously things can get done much faster. But have y'all ever experienced either educating up and building that advocate for yourself, or maybe it's even just finding an advocate within the engineering team itself? What are some of the things that you've done when an advocate wasn't already in place for you?
Yeah, I think that's mostly happened with me when I was working full-time. Because when I was working as a consultant, if I saw that a company is not that interested, that they would need me to push everything, I would be just well, not interested to work with you. But when I was working full-time, I was working in one company, and we had lots of things on the website that could have been fixed, and I was working through them. And actually just randomly made friends with a developer. Made friends. And as a result, I remember that whenever I would send, he would implement pretty quickly, just because I built this rapport with him. And also, obviously, it was not anything random. He knew that if I'm sending something, that's pretty important. And then when another layer was added, because this developer was like the main developer in the company, and he was swamped with so many things. So another layer was added to protect him. And then I was like, okay, cool. And then I would go to this another person who was responsible for like for distributing the tasks to this developer, and I would explain why and how, like not how, but like why this needs to be done, and like this is the information, and they would say, okay, yes, that makes sense. And especially I would tie it to the business goal. Again, never just like, oh, for SEO. Nobody cares. Yeah, so I would tie it to the business goal and why we need to implement this right now, and what business goal will have it, what business goal will be achieved because of this, or will help to achieve with this.
Yeah, before you start, I just want to throw out there, like, I think there's so many times that we as SEOs say it's for SEO, but that is really such a loaded statement, and we know what it means, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I mean,
also anyone can say that.
Yeah, anyone can say that.
There's crappy SEOs out there saying it, and there's wonderful SEOs out there saying it. But like, how is a developer supposed to know?
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm trying to point out is it is a loaded statement. And a lot of times when we say it's for SEO, okay, well, what does that actually mean? And breaking it down and like you say, bringing it back to that business goal is something that everybody can get on board. And especially if you've paid attention to what the engineering goals are and you can bring it back to one of theirs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because everyone wants the business objectives, but ultimately they need to hit their own goal too. So if you can tie a conversion win to some, a product that they're on within an org, broadly speaking, or, if there really is a push for site performance to make users happier, like, oh, suddenly your site speed suggestions might actually get implemented.
Yeah, exactly.
Are we working on technical debt? What technical debt? If I can frame it in terms of their language, that goes a long way. But I mostly just want to echo exactly what Kristina said. It's about making real human friendships and connections, because I think unless you can get people who are willing to spend time with you, to build a relationship with you, that you can start having that. And that's why it's much easier to do when you're in-house, to build that relationship. If you don't already have the advocate, you need to build that relationship, which means someone has to be willing to spend time with you. And that's harder in an agency world, because why would they be willing to spend time with you unless someone tells them to? So you have to have influence somewhere, and you have to have a willing party who's gonna take the time to invest in that relationship over time. And that's a lot easier to do if you can walk up to them and bribe them with cookies in person,
which I've totally done. Yeah, absolutely.
One tip.
I found that usually after team buildings, like when you get together and you spend some fun time together, after that things move so much faster. After that, it's so much easier.
Yeah, no, so my first job, I was, my first office job, I guess I should say. So I ended up randomly being in charge of the product roadmap, which, by the way, should have never happened because I was like 23 years old. What the heck? And like we were designing solutions for Dell and BlackBerry, and like it was.
Is that what happened to BlackBerry?
It was very
your fault.
But I actually started like a lunch bunch crew because I noticed that a bunch of the developers always ate a bunch of fast food at lunch. So they would pay me like $5 to $10, and I would just bring in food and made enormous amounts of food and gave them home cooked meals. And suddenly, like, they're all my friends. So food is just a really powerful tool. But I think ultimately one of the other things is just education. And then also, really thinking about that other person's perspective and what actually matters to them. Yeah. Also, one of my favorite things to do is, like, especially if we're asking for a feature that would give us power over some kind of technical aspect in admin. Like, hey, I want to be able to edit the robots.txt. Things
so
like
I don't have to bug you all the time.
Yeah, when you bring it back to, really what's happening over here is like on the SEO side, you're like, I had to wait 3 months for this fix to go in. And that was pretty unacceptable because for me, this is a fire and all these other things. And when you turn it back on, you know, I just want to bug you guys less.
I want to save you time in the long run.
Yeah.
Give me the ability.
Yeah.
So put this on me so that you don't have to worry about it. So, you know, really thinking, and like I say, it's all about the empathy of realizing we all have different goals. And if you can figure out what their goals are and how you can kind of complement each other and help each other accomplish, then I think that's where you start to see some real collaboration, just like any team, really, whether it's your customer service team or content team, editorial, brand, compliance, even. Just having some empathy goes a long way.
Yep.
I agree.
All right. Well, we are going to start closing out. So what are some last thoughts about how to improve relationships with dev or increase your understanding about engineering and development so that you can be a more effective technical SEO? Anything you want?
Oh my God. Now we need to, no pressure. Now we need to sum up everything. So, okay. I would say that, in order to be successful in technical SEO without any coding skills, well, first of all, you need to know technical SEO really well, because, if you are able to understand the links between this and that, it's so much easier for you to understand what's really important to be fixed and what it looks like when it's fixed. So that's the first thing. Don't rely on like, oh, I need to learn coding. And the last time I checked, there were like almost 9,000 coding languages, with like JavaScript being the most important. It has so many frameworks and it's also updated all the time. And you're in SEO and you have like so many SEO updates. That's too much. That's too much. So like, don't think like, what's the next coding language I need to learn. Just focus on learning technical SEO on like really deep level first. Then you'll be able to understand things so much better. And then make friends with the developers. Like, treat everyone as humans and as not like as gatekeepers, or like, don't assume that they're doing their job really bad or something like that. Like, make friends with them, learn about their whys, why they want this way, like what are their goals, what are their business goals, and then tie all your recommendations, all your prioritized recommendations to these goals, and then it will be so much easier for you to get things implemented in the SEO industry.
Yeah.
I love that. I was more expecting like, are there any quick tidbits that you could add? But if you're going to throw it out,
no,
beautiful.
I love that. Can I also, to your point, call out, why does every SEO who thinks that they should be learning coding for SEO learn Python? Like,
I don't know. It's like oh, Python. It's like, why?
They always start there, but it actually won't help you understand the technical SEO point. Like, you want to build tools? Okay. Like,
yeah,
do that. That's a great, like, cool. You can write a script to like help you write other stuff, but that doesn't help you understand how to implement things and do things. And as if there's not 50 billion coding languages, where do you start? Why wouldn't you start with HTML?
And also, my comment earlier about JavaScript is a horrible language. It is one that I use quite often, which is why I also feel that I'm allowed to say it's a terrible language. It is outdated for sure.
We are a household that hates JavaScript.
We are.
As is first.
So, yes. Yep. Yeah. So I love all of that. And so one thing I would say too, from a more practical perspective, for those who are getting into technical SEO, really digging into accessibility guidelines starts to give you an idea, I think, of the birth of technical SEO. There's so many things that are important elements for us in technical that actually originated as ways for people of all abilities to engage with digital content. So that's also sometimes a really powerful way to get changes implemented, because when you're like, hey, I want to make sure that my links are presented in this way and have link text or title text, because I want people who are on screen readers to still be able to interact with our content, right? You're making it really about human connection. And sometimes that's much easier to sell. And then also for you, it's easier to understand why it's important. You know, why does heading hierarchy matter with H1s, H2s, H3s? it originated as a tool to help people who are on screen readers. So really starting to understand some of those things like image alt text, that's where it comes from as well. So, if you're looking for where do I begin to understand this massive world of technical SEO that can get extremely deep and extremely convoluted, if you start there, I think it's a really interesting piece to really start to understand the human need for technical SEO beyond just, well, I want Google to crawl my site. Well, you also probably want users of all abilities to interact with your content too. So bring back that human.
Yep. I have a soapbox too. The thing I want SEOs to learn before I want them to learn to code, I want them to learn how to analyze data. I mean, such an under-leveraged skill, honestly, because it's part of your core job. Like, if you don't know the results of the work that you did and how to understand that it worked and how to find what worked and implement more of what worked, then you're not doing your core job. And so, I mean, that was...
Ooh, that's strong. She's spitting fire over here.
Yeah, mic drop.
Like, if you can't, like, you need to do the baseline of the job before you can start to implement and go deeper into other things, right? So you need to have basics of how do I understand this data? Where is it coming from? How does it help me make better decisions? And no, this doesn't mean you need to be like an expert in, A/B
you don't
testing
need to
or
learn
knowing
Python
R
so you
or
can do data
things.
science.
Like, I don't need data science levels, but you do need data analyst level of understanding, hey, should I do this tactic or this tactic? And what do we think is going to have the most impact on the bottom of line based on the number of users I have and, the goals I'm trying to accomplish? Like, you should be able to do the math, calculate that. That comes first. And then when you actually implement it, you should be able to calculate what actually happened.
Plus, when in doubt, that's a really strong way to build those advocates. If you have data and support, hey, you guys listened and implemented this change and look what happened.
Yes.
So I think
being the person with the numbers in the room goes a long way to
really
building
does.
advocates.
So, absolutely.
Soapbox.
All right. Well, y'all, this was a great conversation and I kind of loved it. So certainly if you have any questions about but collaborating with developers, feel free to send them to us. Kristina, for those who loved everything you were saying, obviously there's your course, and how can they connect with you online?
Yes, you can connect with me online on LinkedIn, just Kristina Azarenko, or on Twitter, Azarchik, CK at the end. Or if you want to really become confident in your technical SEO skills, you can also check out techseo.pro. This is my course that I created for people like you, probably who want to go to advanced, from intermediate to advanced level of being a technical SEO.
Oh, awesome. And people should download your plugin for Chrome, because honestly, it's fantastic. And
it's so good.
It just tells you exactly in exactly the format. So go check out the marketing.
It's got the SEO Pro extension. Yeah.
SEO Pro extension. There you go.
Yes.
That's the one. It's magical. Highly recommend. As a personal user and big fan of our wonderful, amazing Barbie.
Yes. And definitely, if you have not subscribed yet to Opinionated SEO Opinions, be sure to do that. Follow us at gray.co on Twitter, LinkedIn, all the things. I did just find out T2/Pebble is closing down today, so not that. Keep in mind, any questions you have about SEO, submit to us, thegray.company/ask SEO questions, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.